My eyes opened to a world out of focus, a blur of greens and browns. Pain throbbed behind my temples.
He sat up, leaves crunching under his hands. Panic swelled in his chest. A silent scream. Who was he? Where was he?
My mind was a blank slate wiped clean of any memory.
He stood, his legs wobbly. Towering trees surrounded him, their branches forming a canopy overhead. The air hung heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. The forest seemed to press in, suffocating him with its silence.
I have to escape. I have to remember.
Staggering through the undergrowth, he stumbled upon a worn dirt path. Hope flickered. A path meant people, civilization, answers. He followed it, clinging to the hope of finding someone, anyone who could tell him who he was. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, he heard voices. Children's laughter, faint but distinct. Relief washed over him. He was not alone. He picked up his pace, his heart pounding. The path led him to the edge of the woods, opening onto a quaint village nestled in a valley. Small cottages with thatched roofs lined a cobblestone street. A central well stood as a silent sentinel, a hub of activity. Children chased each other through the square, their laughter echoing off the stone buildings.
I hesitated at the edge of the village, unsure how to proceed. Everyone seemed to know their place in this idyllic setting, their movements imbued with a practiced ease that felt alien to me. I was an outsider, an anomaly.
He approached a group of men gathered near the well, their faces weathered by time and etched with a shared history he couldn't comprehend. They greeted him with knowing nods, their eyes holding a flicker of something unreadable.
"Daniel," one of the men said, his voice gruff with age. "You all right, son? You seem lost."
Daniel flinched at the sound of his name, a name he didn't recognize as his own. Why did they call him Daniel? Days turned into nights, and still, Daniel remained trapped in a paradox of familiarity and utter disorientation. The villagers treated him with a strange mix of warmth and reservation. They called him Daniel, shared meals with him, yet skillfully evaded his questions about his past. Their smiles strained.
I felt like a ghost haunting my own life, a stranger in a place where I was supposed to belong.
The village, initially a beacon of hope, had become a suffocating cage of secrets. The laughter of children grated on his nerves, their carefree joy a stark contrast to the growing unease gnawing at him. The old woman with kind eyes who served him soup each day would avert her gaze when he asked about his life before. The blacksmith, a burly man with calloused hands, would simply grunt and change the subject. Even the children, their eyes wide with curiosity, seemed to be in on the conspiracy of silence. Frustration gnawed at him.
Why couldn't I remember? What are they hiding?
He began to notice the subtle glances, the hushed whispers that ceased when he drew near. The villagers knew something, but they weren't telling him. He was an outsider, an enigma, even to himself. One evening, as the sky blazed with the colors of a setting sun, Daniel encountered her, Elia. She stood apart from the other villagers, her back against a weathered stone wall, her eyes reflecting the fading light. There was a knowing sadness in their depths, a depth that belied her youthful appearance.
Unlike the others, she didn't shy away from my gaze. She met my questions with a quiet intensity, her silence speaking volumes. She seemed to understand my confusion, the desperation clawing at my sanity.
She would leave him cryptic clues. A single wildflower on his doorstep, a drawing of a labyrinth etched on a stone, a whispered word in the dead of night. Each gesture, seemingly insignificant, ignited a flicker of recognition in his mind, a spark in the vast darkness of his amnesia.
You're not supposed to remember.
Her words, laced with fear, confirmed his suspicions. This village, this life, it was all a lie, but why? On the outskirts of the village, nestled among a grove of ancient oak trees, stood a dilapidated cottage.
It was here that I woke up, my mind a blank slate.
And it was here, guided by a growing sense of urgency, that he returned, hoping to find answers within its crumbling walls. The air hung heavy with the scent of decay and forgotten memories.
Dust motes danced in the faint rays of sunlight that pierced through cracks in the boarded-up windows.
The silence was oppressive, broken only by the creaking of the floorboards beneath his feet. He explored the cottage room by room, each one a testament to a life he couldn't recall.
A faded tapestry depicting a hunting scene hung on one wall, its colors muted with time. A chipped porcelain doll lay discarded in a corner, its painted eyes staring blankly ahead.
Then he discovered it. A hidden room, concealed behind a bookshelf that swung inward with a groan. Inside, a single wooden desk sat bathed in the eerie glow of a flickering oil lamp. On the desk lay a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with hurried handwriting.
With trembling hands, Daniel opened the journal. The words swam before his eyes, a jumbled mix of scientific jargon and frantic scribbles. He recognized his own name, repeated over and over again, like a mantra. Subject 7. The designation sent chills down his spine.
He pieced together fragmented memories, flashes of sterile white walls, the cold bite of metal, the hum of machinery, experiments, memory manipulation. He was not a resident of this idyllic village. He was a prisoner in his own mind. The journal spoke of a radical experiment, an attempt to create a simulated reality, a world where memories could be erased and rewritten. He, Daniel, Subject 7, was their test subject. But something had gone wrong. The cycles were malfunctioning. He was retaining fragments of his past, glimpses of the truth. As he delved deeper into the journal, a chilling realization washed over him. The villagers, the idyllic life, it was all a fabrication, a carefully constructed lie designed to keep him trapped. But who were they, and what was their true purpose?
Panic seized Daniel. He had to escape this fabricated existence, this prison disguised as a peaceful village. He raced back through the cottage, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. He burst out into the fading light, the once comforting sight of the village now chilling him to the bone. He saw the villagers gathered in the square, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of torches. Their eyes followed his every move, their expressions unreadable. He was a lab rat in a maze, his every move observed, analyzed. He remembered Aaliyah's words, "You're not supposed to remember." She was right. His memories were a threat to their carefully constructed reality. He had to reach her, warn her. But she was nowhere to be found. His gaze fell upon the well in the center of the square. He remembered a diagram in the journal, a schematic of the simulated environment. The well, it was the access point, the key to breaking free. Daniel sprinted towards the well, his breath ragged in his chest. He could hear the villagers closing in behind him, their footsteps echoing on the cobblestone street. He reached the well, his hands gripping the rough stone edge. He remembered the inscription on the final page of the journal exit. A single word etched into the stone, a beacon of hope in his manufactured reality. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and pressed the word. The world dissolved around him. The familiar sights and sounds of the village faded into a blinding white light. He felt a sense of weightlessness, of being untethered from reality itself. Then, darkness. When he opened his eyes, he was met with the cold, sterile reality of a laboratory. He was strapped to a table, wires snaking across his body, monitoring his every function. Men and women in lab coats rushed around him, their faces etched with a mixture of shock and excitement.
The cycle failed. Subject 7 retains memories. The simulation is compromised.
Daniel looked around the lab, his heart pounding against his ribs. He was free from the village, but he was still a prisoner. He had questions, so many questions. Who were these people? Why had they subjected him to this cruel experiment? And what had happened to Aaliyah? He would not rest until he had answers. The fight was far from over. He had escaped the confines of their simulated world, but the true battle, the pursuit of truth, had just begun. He would not be a lab rat, a subject. He would reclaim his life, his memories, his identity.